The following is a KPB MediaWorks production.
Choose your fighter.
And we're on. Welcome to another episode of KPBCast, guys. Raphael here with Kurt Vincent, director and producer of The Lost Arcade, a documentary about legendary arcade Chinatown Fair. Before we go on with our interview, I'd like to just give you guys a heads up. The podcast is available on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio, all those platforms. Of course, video is going to be on Twitch. It's going to be premiering on Twitch soon. Afterwards, you could grab it on YouTube. And of course, I want to give a little bit of a shout out to affiliates, Acquire Clothing and Media Art. Check them out. You know, you can get some pretty good apparel there. And with that, Kurt, how are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Not bad, not bad. Once again, man, thank you for joining us. And mainly this podcast, guys, is going to be about The Lost Arcade. This is the guy who brought it to you. If you haven't seen it already, it is on Prime Video. It's a really great documentary, especially if you've passed some time at that arcade, which I did a lot. So, Kurt, how did you told me before we started this that you really don't have much of a background in the FGC. You came onto the FGC because of the documentary. So what sparked an interest in you to make a documentary based on this arcade?
Well, dude, we ended up at Chinatown Fair. When I say we, I mean my partner Irene. She's my lady. She's my filmmaking partner. She's half of the equation. And we ended up at Chinatown Fair one night. It was a Friday night in February 2010. And it was maybe 11 o'clock, and the place was alive, man. And Street Fighter 4 had just come out relatively recently. And the shit was on fire, man. Can I curse on this?
Of course you can. It's the internet.
All right, cool. Yeah, man, we were just like, there was like literally people drinking 40s discreetly in the backs, smoking blunts out front. And at the same time, it was like really welcoming and just positive energy in the whole place. And we're not gamers. I love video games. I'm a very casual player. I'm a fan of good games and having a good time. With that said, I'm not good at Street Fighter, but I like recognized the game, right? I recognized that these guys, and they were mostly guys, on those cabinets were doing something at a high level. And on top of it, just looking around the arcade, we were like, man, this place is really special. Like, it just was fun to be in. And then we heard that it was going to close, and it was on Reddit, and that's how we heard the rumor it was going to close, and we just picked up a camera and started filming. That's how I met a few of the guys. I met Anthony Callie, who goes by Hellgen, and Henry Sen, who Golden Sen, legendary New York player and Open Next Level. Those guys sort of introduced us to the fighting game community, and that became really inspiring to us.
So just to rewind a little bit, so you and your lady, you guys were just randomly out one night and you stumble upon this arcade?
We were going to Bar 169 in off the Bowery in Chinatown, and I left my ID at home, literally, and I couldn't get in. And I said, well, hey, like, this gives us, what's nearby? And I'd heard about Chinatown Fair Arcade, and we were like, let's go. They're not going to make me, you don't need an ID to get in an arcade.
Right. So
that's how we ended up there, for real.
You go in there and you said it yourself, you see this atmosphere, and that's actually one of the things I do enjoy about the film. Even though maybe a lot of people don't really like it, because I've had plenty of other guests on this show talking about that arcade. Even though it was grimy, dirty, it was still a welcoming feeling. And you said you met some of the guys there, like Henry San and Anthony, and they introduced you to what competitive gaming is. And
Right.
Let's take each one. I would like to take each one. Anthony, right off the bat on the documentary, I like to think he's more like a setter for it. Like, you see him taking all these photos. Like he said it himself, he wants to document this because at the
Right.
time, not many people wanted to grab a camera and started taking photos. Because like you said, it was closing down, and that really hit home with a lot of people. But even so, when you just like you still only had a fraction of a time of the time a lot of those guys and girls in there had.
Hmm.
Was it the family? I guess the togetherness, and it felt like a big family. Is that what caused you to pick
Yeah.
up your camera, your film camera, and just do this documentary?
It's not what honestly what really got us to pick up the camera in the very first place was just the fact that the arcade um, seemed like it was the last of its kind, and
Of course.
and if it was gonna close, I thought that somebody should document it, kind of like what Anthony felt. He had personal reasons. I more had historical reasons and thinking, oh, like no one else is going to do this, so like I should at least show up and see what I capture. Now, and it was based on the fact that it was this grimy, cool place full of cool people doing something that I thought was cool. But then once I met Anthony and Henry and they started talking to me about how, oh yeah, Sam Palmer, that guy's like my second father. Um, this arcade, I spent more time at this arcade than I did at home. It's like that's when we realized, oh damn, this place is like this. There's like a real story to tell here
Of course.
that's deserving of a full documentary. And even and some people that watch the documentary, some of the haters, which there's always going to be haters, they're like, does this really need a full film? And I'm like, you're missing the point. Like this is you're not grasping how important this culture and this community was and still remains to be to these people.
I'm surprised you're saying that. Some people are actually saying, "Why does this deserve a full film?" I mean, if you're asking why, then I guess you just didn't live it. That place was so
Yeah.
legendary, especially for us New York players, even for people who came out from the West Coast, gamers who let's go visit the legendary Chinatown Fair. How did you go about it at the beginning? Who obviously you talked to Henry Sen, you talked to Anthony, and I'm sure later on you talked to Hokoru. I believe
Yeah,
that's how you
Kuma
pronounce that
Hokura.
last name.
Shout
You
out to
also talked to
Kuma.
Sam. There you go, man. Shout out to him. And you also, of course, talked to Sam. And he
Yeah.
basically told us how he came across this thing. It was very interesting that he just had a dream of all this coins coming down on him. But
Isn't that
what
crazy?
is the process? I know, right? It's really awesome. I mean, whenever I tried to talk to him, it was kind of hard because he's always busy. But I mean,
Oh, you met
take us
Sam?
into your. I'm sorry.
You met Sam?
I met him when I used to go down there, and we didn't have like the relationship that Henry and him had. But
Sure, but
I
you
had a
got
few
to
chances to
interact.
talk to
Yeah.
him. Great guy, of course, yes. But take us into the mind of a film director. How does a project like this get put together?
Well, I feel like Sam actually is the. I think when we realized that Sam played such a big part in these people's lives and in the fact like Chinatown Fair, like in terms of business, it was a very difficult business to make profitable during different stretches in time. Post 9/11, that whole
Oh yes,
neighborhood, Chinatown, was blocked off. I mean, nobody was going to the arcade. On top of it, there was just like not a lot of arcade games being made. So Sam was like driven. He was driven by make to make money, but at some point, you got to start looking at the numbers. And Henry really told me that like Sam at some point started doing it because it was like really important to him for his own reasons. And that's when I realized, like, oh, that's a really compelling story to tell when you've got this guy, Sam Palmer, and then you've got all these younger people that sort of made up this ragtag arcade family. Um, and so as a filmmaker, you see those things and you're like, oh, I know I could do something with this. And that's, and then I did a Kickstarter. I was like an early Kickstarter back in 2011. And we raised a little bit of money. It wasn't enough, but we raised some, and that led to a little bit more money from IGN, who was a great supporter early on, even though some asshole writer. First off, they shouldn't have reviewed the film because they funded it, but then the dude like wrote honestly one of the worst reviews, like one of the most scathing reviews of the film. Like we got a positive review in the New York Times, but the IGN for some reason gave us a bad one. Whatever.
Oh,
But
that's kind of
before
odd.
that, they were very supportive of the film.
And by the way, quick shout out to Sam because, like you said, it like he took it on as a personal level thing. I mean, he said it himself.
Yeah.
Everybody there might as well have been family. And who would have thought that him, an Indian guy who's never had anything to do with video games, but he knew how to fix electronics. He just comes on and decides to buy this thing, and he lasted as long as he did. And one of the things about the title again, the Lost Arcade, by all means, even the film itself, and you got some great archival footage. At Chinatown
Yeah.
Fair, how it managed to be the last one that survives, it really is amazing. Considering what you said, post 9/11, that place was shut down. It was such a hole in the wall. Okay, we had the tic tac toe chicken, but even then, like after a while, that wasn't the reason why people went down there. It really is a testament to how much he really wanted that place to last.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't know if I ever truly figured out why, but I I think I think it does have a lot to do with the people, the relationships he found at the arcade. I think in the arcade he found a lot of freedom, and he really enjoyed his role in the community that formed around the games there. It was a cool vibe.
Of course, definitely. So, we go from Anthony, like you said, he was taking pictures there. You could clearly tell the guy was very passionate about the place. But then you move on to two other people, Henry Sen, who's very passionate about the business, but he looks at it from a business side of things. He's still a gamer. He's still a competitive gamer in his heart, but he knows where the business is going. And then of course you have Akuma, who clearly represents the hardcore gamer, the person who loves Chinatown Fair, who didn't want to see it to die. Um, take us into your mind when you see these two different characters. They're obviously both there for the same love of the place. I believe, yeah, they both were workers there. I'm very positive. But
Hmm.
the different perspectives. How did you see that?
Well, Henry, right away, we knew Henry had to be a main character in the story of Chinatown Fair, because Sam didn't know the games, right? Sam was like a businessman and managed. He really could run it, right? But Henry, at some point, Sam realized that Henry loved the games, and Sam could trust and rely on Henry to curate the game. So, like, shout out to Henry Sen, because the reason why Chinatown Fair still had, um, certain games like Miss Pac-Man, or certain obscure fighting games like
Of course.
Neo Geo Cabinet and stuff like that. Dude,
Hmm.
that the reason why those games were there was 100% Henry. Sam allowed it, but Henry made sure, like, to have a good arcade, you got to have the classics, even if they're not going to make a ton of money, right?
And
Because
even he would
it's
also, like you
important.
said, bring in obscure games because even though they may be obscure, they're still fan bases, especially at that arcade, which the
Yes.
FGC was very big at. And also let's also mention the music gamers as well because they were a
Shout
big
out to
part of
music
that. But please
gamers.
keep going on. Mhm.
Yeah, dude. Sidebar: music games. I wish we had been able to make like a whole other film, right? That was about the music gamers, because for whatever reason we connected with the fighting games, and honestly, I feel like the fighting games were the heart and soul of the arcade, but the rhythm games, the rhythm gamers in that scene, which there was some crossover too, right? Like a lot of gamers
Oh,
like
of course,
fighting. A lot
yes.
of that's actually something that people should recognize more. That some of the best fighting gamers spent serious time on DDR and in the group. Like it's connected, man. Like they're both so competitive.
Well, one of the guys, my co-host, Rowderman's Prime, Rodney, he besides being a fighting game player, he was very big in the DDR community as well. He was a competitive DDR community player, and it's kind of hard not to cross over considering you were all
Yeah,
bunched up together in that one little L-shaped place.
yeah. Yeah, but back, yeah, I wish I could have gone into, and we did film some more of the dance stuff, but it just didn't really, fit into the story we ended up telling. But Henry, so I knew Henry had to be a main character, um, and then when Henry opened Next Level, sort of his response to the closing of Chinatown Fair, Akuma started working there, and that's when we met Akuma. And when Akuma, like when we met Akuma, I think we were told. I think we were introduced to Akuma. I think our buddy Ben Fong might have told us, "Yo, you gotta if you met Akuma, that dude fucking lived in an arcade like when he was a teenager." And that's when we were like, "What?" Yeah, introduced us to Akuma, and then we met him and we just connected, man. Like we were just like, I don't know, like when you just meet someone and you just feel a connection. And we felt so blessed to, I don't know, like be given an opportunity to tell Akuma's story, which was a really beautiful story, but a very personal and challenging story to tell. And yeah, I don't know. It felt like we took our duty very serious. We wanted to really respect all the characters and treat them like with a lot of respect.
Well, I feel that the film, by all means, like you said, Henry Chen is a main character in the movie. He's one of the main characters. But you're absolutely right. Akuma's story, by all means, it resonates with this community. His emotional feelings towards that place, and like you said, the guy grew up in an arcade. That's what a lot of us did. Those places were our lives. If you go back and hear some of the interviews that I've done with some of the people who lived and breathed arcades. Akuma couldn't be a better personification of
Mm,
people's loves
mm,
for those machines. Just not just arcade, the machines
mm,
themselves.
mm. Yeah, that's cool.
And but going back to that, like I said, Henry Sen, he's the business minded gamer. Akuma is the
Yeah.
he's the
Yeah.
emotional gamer.
I think that's fair. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's totally
And
true. I mean, Henry did allow us to. He kind of gave us the because the story of the arcade is two stories, right? It's the story of the gamers, but it's also the story of the business. Because at the end of the day, the arcade has to make money to stay open. And
of course,
Henry understood that. So it's like Henry was the dude that when Street Fighter 4 came out and Capcom said that they weren't going to make any cabinets for the North American market, Henry was like, we need it. Like the community, the fighting game scene, fighting game community needs these cabinets in Chinatown Fair. Because if it's not Chinatown Fair, where, right? And he found a way to do it. And I found that story so inspiring, man. It's like, it's like so many people, you know, find themselves in a shitty situation and they just say, well, there's nothing I can do about it, right? But Henry said, how are we going to get Street Fighter 4 in Chinatown Fair? And what's fucking cool is that he got those, he bought the cabinets from China off, not Capcom cabinets. He just got the boards from Japan, got parts from China,
hmm
built the cabinets, got Street Fighter 4 in Chinatown Fair before the console release.
yes.
That's what's up, man. So the only place you could play Street Fighter 4, not only on a cabinet, but like at all, unless you had, I don't know, unless you had some sort of pirated shit, was at Chinatown Fair. That shit, dude, I wish I had been at Chinatown Fair the week that Henry got that cabinet, because got the game in the arcade, because I heard it was just like they were doing all night sessions. Were you there at all during that moment?
I wasn't there when it was first showed up, but I did show up maybe a week later, and the lines going out of this place were out of this world. I mean, you need to understand something. 2009, Street Fighter 4 comes out, and it revitalizes the fighting game genre. A lot of people
Yeah.
call that time from 2009 to, I want to say, 2015, 2016, the golden age, the revival, because
Oh, for real?
that game, of course, yes, that game, man. I mean, the previous years, God bless games like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo and Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but that game revitalized the scene that was basically almost dead. It brought new fans, it brought new eyes to it, and what Henry was able to do, and like you said, he literally built these custom made cabinets also to show the new way that a lot of gamers would play with the Japanese components, Asian components, which is the buttons and the joystick much more sensitive compared to the American HAP and I forget the other name brand, the HAP mainly. But yeah, it gave everybody an opportunity because if there's one thing the fighting game community, especially here, is they wanted to keep up with the Japanese the Japanese players, the Asian players. Is like no, and
Right.
Henry Sen basically said it himself. We have to keep up with them because if not, our competition comes over here, we're just going to get completely destroyed. And God bless the guy for doing that.
That's cool. Yeah. And you know what else? It just occurred to me. Um, we happened to capture like the beginning, not the very beginning, but part of the beginning of streaming fighting games, like Twitch.
Oh
Like it was
yes,
like early, like when we were filming that shit. Like people, vast majority of the population did not have any idea that people were DIY live streaming video game events. Right now, it's like mainstream. But like Spooky, shout out to Spooky, man. Like that's a whole other movie, right? Like how that guy and his crew like started streaming in Chinatown Fair. Like they actually were streaming Street Fighter 4. I mean, you probably saw them. I mean, they were doing that before the arcade closed in 2010, 2009 even. That's like early days of live streaming.
now let's talk about Akuma for a second. Like you said, you have to deal with that one. You have to deal with it with sensitive gloves, I guess, because
Yeah.
his story is it's a very deep storyline, and I think you captured it very well on film. And it's again, you go from Henry Sen, who's down to earth. He could talk to you, about anything, competitive gamer, businessman, and then you go to Akuma, who's just had a rough childhood, rough adulthood. Like, how do you approach that? Because a lot of people would see a guy like him and would think it's like, oh no, I'm not. It's like he looks like he's
Mm.
having a bad day, or it's like I don't want to mess with this guy. Even though he did work there, I'm sure everybody loved him, whoever worked there. But again, like you said it yourself, how do you approach that subject?
You know, it was just on a human level, like on a real life, like like not even thinking about the movie, just thinking about like connecting with him in the moment and forming a friendship. It's like and what like the connection we formed, him, me, and Irene, allowed us to ask him those questions and ask him. I think it's something that like requires like you have to be authentic and real. Like nothing can be faked, right? Like when you're talking to somebody about their life, and if you want them to open up and share it with you, you need to be for real. And I think Akuma sensed that we were for real and that we really wanted to listen. Like we just fucking listen, man. Like that's like the key. If you want to be a filmmaker, a documentary filmmaker, or a journalist, or a podcaster, or whatever, it's like you ask a question and then you listen, and you listen hard, and that's what we did. And like I don't know why he trusted us, man, but like he did, and like he told us things that he'd never told other people with a fucking camera on, and that showed how much he trusted us. And it's like anybody that like wants to question, we were total outsiders to the scene, but in a way that was a benefit, right? Because we didn't go into the fighting game scene or like with any sort of preconceived notions or anything like that. So we were just like blank slates. Tell us what you know, and I think that's like that was the approach from day one, and it seemed it worked.
And like you said, he opened up a lot to you. Um, he opened up about his struggles. I'm sure he opened up about a ton of things. And you're doing this documentary, and like you said it yourself, you're an outsider to this community. And with him, I guess in a weird way, even though you're still outsiders, you're taking it all in. When that
Yeah.
film was done, could you say that he represents the highest of highs and the lowest of lows in the community, as in, like, the lowest when his heart was taken out when that arcade
Mm,
died down, and the highest when next level it was popping, everything like that. You get what I'm saying? Like, is that a good representation of him?
yeah, for sure. I think you nailed it. I think we spent time with a lot of other people and filming and capturing their stories, and ultimately, compared to what Akuma's story showed us, it was the ultimate. It really was. It's like he showed us the highest highs and the lowest lows, and kept it real in a way that is universal. You don't have to be a gamer to appreciate his story. Um,
Definitely. And I
yeah,
think a lot of us in the FGC were, at least people who have seen that documentary, I'm sure they were touched, because a lot of them basically have experienced what he's experienced. And I'm sure he's very grateful that you were able to capture all of that.
thank you.
So,
Thank you.
moving on, you then introduced another character, another person, Lonnie.
Mm,
He's an arcade entrepreneur, in the sense that he opens up fun centers, family centers. Funny guy. I wish I could have
yes,
met him. I only know him from that documentary. He looks like a really fun guy to be around. But I, how did you meet him? Like, how was it
this is
basically?
funny.
Go ahead.
Well, basically, we were filming. Okay, so we're like filming, and then we're like, this movie is about the last arcade in New York City. We're gonna call it the Lost Arcade, and it's the story of Chinatown Fair, right? Um, we're filming just random B-roll, so just like footage of Chinatown one night.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and we head down Mott Street. We want to get a shot of the building that Chinatown Fair is in. It's closed, right? Like the gates down, and it's nighttime. And we end up in front, and we notice that the gates pulled up, and somebody's sweeping the inside. And
Right.
I say, start rolling. So we start filming, and some guy walks out. He's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And I say, "Hey, I'm Kurt. We're making a documentary about Chinatown Fair. What's going on?" And he's like, "Oh, it's going to reopen." I'm Lonnie. And then he didn't tell us like he was the one reopening it, but he said, "I'm Lonnie." And I said, "All right, cool." Like, well, I actually freaked out because I was like, "Whoa!" Like this totally changes the whole movie, which was good because it's a more interesting story. But at that moment, all I could think of was like, "Oh boy, we have way more work to do. We gotta start filming again." So that's how I met Lonnie that night. That was Lonnie Sobel, man.
But he's a funny guy, because again,
Yeah,
according to the documentary, he's been at this for a long time. I mean, the guy's got grandkids, and he still runs a ton of businesses, specifically around arcade machines. But in a weird
yeah.
way, at that point, how long have you been filming?
Oh my God, maybe over a year, probably a year.
Okay, so in that year, you've been taking in a lot of information. You've been taking in a lot of this community, how close it was, and how dear that arcade was. Lonnie comes around, he opens it up, and I do remember vaguely on the internet, like you said, there's a lot of haters on the internet, but in a weird way, he was cast as a bad guy by the community, because by this point, I believe Next Level was opened up. That was the
Yeah,
place to go for all the Chinatown Fair refugees. And when this arcade is said that it's going to be opened back up again, like you saw it yourself, you were there, you filmed it. A
yeah,
lot of people was like, "Yes, it's opening back up. Thank you, thank you, thank you." But is it safe to say that the majority of people just they went in it with complete blinders? They obviously they didn't know Lonnie. He just came out of left field, and one of the first things he did was clean the place up. It was a grimy, dirty
yeah.
place, but that was the charm of it. Did you
Right.
feel that he was cast as a bad guy by everybody around the idea that, oh, he's opening up the arcade, so it must be the old ways that we remembered it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think most people thought that he fucked it up by painting it, bringing in all these like redemption games, which suck. If they suck if you're not like on a date or 5 years old. Um, his whole idea of what the new Chinatown Fair arcade will be was so different than what Sam had and that the community was used to. Um,
But
so
is
yeah,
that
I
his
think it's fair
fault?
to say yes and no. I think it's his. I mean, it was a decision he made, right, to rebrand it. His goal was to create a mini Dave and Buster's that would the business model he wanted would rely on birthday parties and redemption games. He had no interest in serving the fighting game community. There was not a single fighting game in the arcade when he opened. Um, but
Well,
to his
to say that real quick, there was a point in the documentary where I believe one of his grandkids, he was talking to when it was the grand opening. I believe
Mhm.
there was a part in the documentary where one of them said, "Oh, my grandfather just doesn't like the teenagers
Yeah,
hanging out." So in a weird way, you're absolutely right. He didn't. Unfortunately, the majority of people who did that at that arcade was the fighting game community.
right. But luckily he put that re-rave cabinet. Shout out to re-rave. Whatever happened to re-rave, dude? Is there? Did they
I,
keep that series going, or was it just a
I
one-off?
have no idea. Steve, do you know if it continues? Because I have no idea. I'm not into rhythm games.
Okay,
Okay,
cool.
they may
Well,
have
shout
missed
out
some
to
other
that
stuff.
team because that game sort of like showed Lonnie because Chinatown Fair was going to close again, man. His whole concept bombed. It just was going out of business again, and one game was keeping it alive. It was Re-Rave, a rhythm game that was bringing in all the rhythm gamers, and he realized, okay, we need to get more of these games. We need to get more games that are competitive, and so he started getting. He brought in a couple dance games and some Japanese rhythm games, and then I think he also added a fighting game or two actually eventually. But it never
Right.
really. I feel like I don't think it ever really reclaimed the fight. I don't know. Did this fighting game community really go there at all now?
From my understanding, no. I mean, there's no reason
Yeah,
for them to had ever gone back there. And the documentary itself, you could clearly hear as Henry Sen, he thought it was a stupid idea to do it because I personally thought it was a weird idea to open it up considering where it's at because Chinatown Fair had survived all those years after every major arcade closed because all the arcade gamers is like, well, this is the last one we have. I don't think he did much research on that arcade after it closed down. But that's just me. I don't know. I don't know the guy. That's just my speculation.
I mean, listen, Lonnie is a businessman who does love arcades. Like that's what's redeeming, right? Like Lonnie isn't an evil, but he's not like you know um, the arcade owner from Wayne's World, where it's just like the guy's just doing it to make money. It's like Lonnie does love arcades, right? Um, and I feel like he did allow Chinatown Fair to be reborn. And shout out to Leo, the manager, who was a part of the community and really has fostered a positive place there. And I talked to Lonnie pre-pandemic, and he was doing really well. He said the arcade had found its feet, and which surprised I not it didn't surprise me. It just surprised me at how positive and optimistic he was. And he was even trying to figure out if they could expand the footprint, into the building next door somehow.
Right, right.
So
I heard about
so I
that.
mean
Yes.
oh cool, yeah. So he pulled it off, man, and like the world's a better place with Chinatown Fair open, even if it's not the same old Chinatown Fair. That's the thing. Chinatown Fair has always changed, right? Every decade, it's a different place.
Of course, of course. And again, my point was is that I think it was kind of weird that the community like branded him as this bad guy because here's an outsider, he doesn't get it, but at the same time, guys, he's a completely different mindset. He can't come in catering just only to one community because it's
Mhm.
different changing times. Well, listen, by that time, all arcades were basically dead. This thing was hanging on. He bought it, he cleaned it up. It's loved by a lot of people. We're clearly showing the documentary. The rhythm gamers, they loved it. They loved the atmosphere. Even some of the FGC, some of the guys who mentioned
Yeah.
it, it's like, hey, listen, this is what it is. It's a family center. There's no drama. There's nobody fighting, and what's wrong with that? I just think it was
Mhm.
it was very what's the word I'm looking for? It was wrong trying to for the community itself. Not that you did it, but it was wrong at the time that I think they branded him as the bad guy just because
Yeah,
he
we
wasn't
tried,
catering to them.
right, and we didn't want him to be this like villain, but at the same time, you had to show that he is an outsider and he did change this place that meant a lot to these people. And it like you said, it had to happen, right? Like
Yes.
it had to happen one way or another. And I just, it's an emotional response, man. Like I think people were so deeply emotionally connected to the memories in their life of this place, and that's just like life, right? Like things don't last forever, and when you go back to like those places that you grew up going to and they're different, you're always going to kind of like say, oh man, fuck that, like it was better back in the day, right? And it was
Of
better
course.
back in the day for you, but like there's a new you at the Chinatown, right? There's a new group at Chinatown Fair, and they are getting exactly what you got out of it, and that's beautiful. And
Of
that's, I
course.
hope we showed that too. We kind of showed like, oh, like Lonnie kind of fucked it up for the old people, but like, he didn't do it to be mean. He did it to just because he's like, I have an idea to try to save this place, and he did allow it to become something else. Now it's less clean, right? Like there's graffiti on the walls now, and it's feeling more, that old spirit. It's like the ghosts are coming back.
You know what? You mentioned something that emotion, and
Mm-hmm.
after it opened up, you cut away. I believe it was to Next Level, and you overheard Akuma going back to him for a second,
Mm-hmm.
saying, I'm just gonna visit it just to see it. And to me,
Mm-hmm.
that scene, the next scene, may be the most powerful scene in the documentary, where you're filming him and he's looking up at Chinatown Fair, and you just see his face. I believe that was Anthony outside telling him, it's like, I've seen that face
Yeah.
before. It's like it's gone, it's all gone. And again,
Yeah.
I think I must have rewound that scene. And I'm talking about the scene where Akuma is walking through it, and he's just,
Mm-hmm.
you could clearly tell like he's walking through it, and his soul is just being, just he can't wait to get out. That by far, in
Yeah.
my opinion, was the most powerful scene in the film. And like you said, you talked to him, he opened up to you. How was it filming that scene?
Well, okay, first off, thank you, man. Okay, that was a very difficult scene to film because Akuma, like, because making a documentary is weird, right? Because it's like, it's not just a simply like, I'm gonna film you do something. It's like a collaboration, right? Like with the people on camera. So like, Akuma became a partner, right? He became our filmmaking partner, and it's like, Akuma, we need to get you back to the arcade, like for the story to come full
Of
circle.
course.
We need to see you at Chinatown Fair. Like you need to do this, and man, dude, he did not want to do it, and because he knew that it was going to be very unpleasant for him to experience it, but he also knew that he had to do it, right? He had to do it eventually, and so we pushed him to do it. Which is why I kept in the edit. I kept that part where he goes, "Can we leave now?" And
Yes.
he's talking to me off camera, and it's like I left that in there because I didn't want people to think that like, you know, I was involved in this, right? Like the filmmaking was created this situation. I didn't want to pretend like we just happened to be there and filmed him. Um, but I'm interested in. So it was very hard to film, and it was very emotional for him. And um, it was intense, man. It was super intense. But Anthony's like more funny about it, and he's just like he uses humor a lot to deal with stuff. But Akuma was just like, "Fuck this, man. It sucks." But what did it make you feel, man? Like, why did that scene in particular? Like, what did you take from it?
Because I love scenes like that. First of all, thank you for not having no music in the background because I think it really helped. You
Word.
see him walking through it, and the thing that I noticed is you could clearly tell is a different atmosphere. That's the one thing I
Mm,
caught. These are
yeah.
redemption machines. This is not a Street Fighter machine screaming Hadouken or a King of Fighters machine or Virtual Fighter, all that stuff. Marvel versus Capcom 2. And I I wasn't emotionally attached to it like he was, but the thing that caught me was it's like again, like we said before, this is the screams of a community. This guy, that emotion he was feeling was exactly what I knew. I want to say 90% of the people who went to that place was feeling as if like your soul is just completely crushed because you dedicated so much time, so many
Mm,
days, so many years to this place. That's why I love that scene. That and of course, and I just also the camera
yeah.
work. Again, you really caught everything. I thought it's a beautiful scene, man.
Thank you, man. Yeah, I'm happy with the way that turned out because I do. It's a really important moment, right? And because you really feel, you can see what he's feeling very clearly,
No, it's a
and
very sad scene.
it does make me think about like, is there a world that like Chinatown Fair, like, okay, video games are like, I don't know, like they're not respected yet in the way that chess or even basketball. It's like this thing that's like a, a distraction or a hobby, and it's not serious. But it's like that Chinatown Fair is like the most important arcade in New York. It's like because it lasted, it lasted longer than Broadway and Playland and all the other places. It became very important. Like it should have been preserved. It should become not a museum, but it should have been saved. Like I
like a
wish
like
the
a
red
historical
walls,
landmark,
like yes, it should be a landmark, right?
at least a New York
Shit, we
landmark.
should we should start a petition, man.
Good luck with that one, but that's neither here nor there, right?
It should definitely
And
be a landmark.
and obviously, you said it yourself. We were with these people for about a year, so I'm sure you were with Henry all the way with the opening of Next Level. And you see he's doing it because he loves the community. He understands New York itself is very competitive, very big FGC here, big community, and he opens up the Next Level. And I do remember, Henry going over when I believe it wasn't fully opened yet, but I saw him talking to Lonnie. And did you feel that Henry may have been bothered by this thing being opened again, and just like Akuma, just like I don't know, I just felt that he was just bothered by it. Was it mainly from the fact that this guy was going to be competition, or it's just another one of those? Is he another one of those that it's like this thing should have stayed dead? I'm no longer here. He dedicated so much time of his life there, but what was it?
I think it was partly like, yeah, he saw it as competition, and I think he would tell you that that's why he was upset. But I think it was deeper than that too. I think it was he always. I don't know. I think part of him saw that he would one day run Chinatown Fair, or like it was his rightful place. I think he'd earned it
You
at a
know what?
certain
I
point.
didn't even think about that. You're absolutely right. Like he was the rightful heir to it.
Yeah, because he played. He was like Sam's right hand man, and really kept it going and worked on the machines. I mean, he started working there when he was like a kid, sweeping the floors for $5 a day or whatever.
Yeah,
So it
since
was
he
just
was
really
a lot of
emotional.
people.
It was upsetting for him to see somebody else take it over and make it their own. And I think he wished he had the opportunity to do that.
It's funny you say that, and I completely forgot about that. Like a lot of people forget how long Henry's worked at Chinatown Fair. He I mean, I believe he was there about 10 plus years, or maybe even 15. But you know what? God bless him. He opens up Next Level. He brings the community with him, even though it was a little bit far away in Brooklyn. That's just me coming from
Mm-hmm.
Westchester. But he's able to manage to, keep this community together. You were there at Next Level. Obviously, very different. Now you have sit down. You have the cabinets there, obviously, but now it's more new generation gaming, new generation casual gaming, as some people like to call it, where basically it's you bring your own controller, you have a monitor. Arcade machines are just no longer there. And again, you were there. Did you feel the same emotion and love that a lot of those players felt at Chinatown Fair, or basically at this point, it's a brand new generation of gamers coming in who never experienced that? Well, what did you feel?
I think it definitely had the similar spirit to Chinatown Fair, but it was Henry's version, right? And Henry is such a serious competitive gamer. I feel like he was really like the sensei of that he was like it was like a dojo he made. He actually talked about it in those terms. He wanted to make a place for people to come together and train. He wanted people to take it very seriously and respect it as a sport. But there was still like the other side of it, which was a social element. It's like this is a place for people that that are passionate about fighting games to come together and hang out and talk about it and just like share their life, have some fun together. So I felt like that was still the same. I do feel like it, having the cabinets and having quarters or swipe or whatever, it is a different vibe than just TVs with the controllers. It's not the same, but and I don't know why, but there's just something to it about having like a big machine and having people gathered around it watching. But they added things new, like they built in like the projector that would project the top matches going on the tournament nights, and like those tournament nights were huge. I think it's very different than Chinatown Fair. You had to pay to get in, so you didn't have people that weren't gaming hanging out, which to Henry was great, right? Because he's a businessman and he wanted people to be paying to make money. But you do lose out on the vibe, right? Because there's a lot of cool people that like myself, I don't know if I would be able to walk. I wouldn't pay to enter Next Level maybe, but if Chinatown Fair had charged me to go in, I don't know if I ever would have made the movie. So you are losing out on some of the vibe by charging admission, right? It's different, but
Well, of course,
the future.
because one thing that arcade machines do, and even pinball machines, it's you hear the sounds that draws people in. You hear buttons being mashed as loud as they were. You hear pinballs going around. You see these lights, and that was the magic of arcades. Like you said, you lose something because now a place like Next Level, okay, it's a dojo, it's a training dojo for a lot of the competitive gamers, but at the same time, it's hard to draw in somebody new who
Yeah,
who, hey, maybe this is going to be the future. I mean, the most perfect example would be the rhythm gamers. I believe his name was Jose Irizarry. I mean, he even mentioned it. He was playing at the new Chinatown Fair, and a bunch of kids came in because they were just intrigued about what the heck is going on in here. So it's obviously
yeah,
two different models of business, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you totally nailed it. Yeah, I guess that makes sense, right? I mean, that's why I think rhythm gamers started gravitating towards Chinatown Fair, and there was a moment where Next Level had the in the groove machine that used to be at CF, and that was fun, but it took up a lot of space, and I don't think it really served Henry's overall mission, which was to really serve the fighting game community.
And again, the documentary was very good. And I guess one question, because somebody did ask me to ask you about it.
Sure.
Chinatown Fair was well known for a lot of characters in there. We're talking about some Sanford Kelly, top New York player. Yipes, a lot of fighting GM. Again, just a lot of top players. Just in and out of that place. And somebody had wanted me to ask, it's like, why were you approached or so for maybe possibly having those people be the characters, or right away? And did you see it's like, you know what, everybody already knows them, even though they do have history here? Guys like Henry and Akuma would be much better storytellers. Let us know about that.
Yeah, no, it's oh I feel really bummed, especially about not having Justin Wong in the film. He was living in California at that moment. Um, but regarding the other guys, I don't know, man. Like, I think because we were outsiders and we were making a story, making a film that we wanted, like we could only make the film we knew how to make. And while I respected Yipes and I respected Kelly and all the other, and Chris G was a rising phenom at the moment. And dude, there were so many top players, right? And but you know what? Like we just connected with the people that we connected with there, and we kind of like that's the thing. Like we didn't make the perfect movie for everyone. We just made the movie that we were like feeling and the vibe, and um, it just and also like I don't know, like it was a collaboration with Henry, it was a collaboration with Kuma. It's just sort of like you said, their stories we really connected with, and it ultimately it ultimately became a story not so much about like there's a lot of details of fighting games that I found very interesting that would that I didn't know how to make into the movie, because it would have become a much more in the nitty gritty of like gamers probably would have liked it more, but it wouldn't have been like I wanted to make a movie that like showed people that were outside of fighting games like how amazing fighting games are, and to do that like we had to like tell the emotional story, the human story, not just like the competitive story.
Did you succeed in your journey doing that?
I think
Are you
so,
satisfied with the end result?
for sure. Yeah, I really am. I think if it's hard for me to watch now because I just see all the things that I would do differently today, but I can definitely watch it and feel like we made the best film we could make and that we respected everybody in it. And I think I'm really glad we did it because I think it's a really important story for people to understand. And we called it the Lost Arcade because we felt like the arcade was being lost and that it should be saved. And whatever that means, in the future, whatever an arcade means. And Next Level is an example of that.
Of course, of course. Hey, listen, man,
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. I want to say thank you once again for coming on with us. I know, you have to run real quick, but before you go, where could people reach out to you? What are your social media outlets?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun talking. It means a lot that the
No, man,
movie
thank you for coming on with us.
connected. Um, yeah, hit me up. I'm on Instagram, the 26 Aries. That's 26 underscore underscore Aries, Aries on Instagram and Twitter.
All right, man. Thank you very much, guys. That's Kurt Vincent, director of The Lost Arcade, available on Amazon Prime. Is it available anywhere else?
Yeah, yeah. It's on. You can rent it on pretty much all the different rental places, and like iTunes or Apple TV. It's on this. If you have a library card, you can watch it for free. Most likely on an app called Canopy. That's Kanopy. I'm a big fan of Canopy. It's for free. It has amazing movies you can stream. a lot of video game movies too. Yeah, man.
Yeah, man, a lot of video game movies have been made. I mean, sometimes I watch Amazon Prime, and after I saw yours, I'm like, oh, look, another video game movie. Not as good as yours, I
Hopefully,
will say that.
thank you,
I'm just not
thank
saying it
you.
just to be a nice guy, but yeah, a lot of them are bad.
We got to do. I'm starting to feel like soon we should do a little postscript sequel. You know, like where's the scene now? Like what's happening?
Hey, listen, man, if you want to do that, by all means, I would completely be behind you. I think it would be
Word.
awesome, especially here for the New York scene, because again, the film does mainly talk about the legendary Chinatown Fair arcade. Um,
Yeah.
I would definitely. I mean, why the heck not? You know what I'm saying? I think that
Yeah.
would be awesome.
Yeah. Cool.
But
Yeah, I'd love to
listen,
find
man.
out like what the next generation's doing.
Oh, definitely, man. Especially since you captured so well the beginning of the quote unquote 2009 golden age.
Mm.
It would be for a great follow up. But once again, man, Kurt, I really appreciate you coming on with us. Thank you for sharing your thought process, how the movie came around. Thank you for sharing all the emotions you went through. You said it yourself. You were not, you and your partner were not hardcore gamers, but you saw a great story to tell there because every niche and by all means fighting games are a niche within the gaming community as a whole. Yeah, you saw what may possibly be one of the most tight-knit groups there is in gaming.
Oh, thanks, man. It means a lot.
and, and once again, guys, thank you for joining us. The podcast is available at Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple, iHeartRadio Podcast. Once again, shout outs to affiliates, Acquire Clothing, Salty Media Art. Podcast, you know where to find it. Video is going to be available on YouTube and Twitch. And again, Kurt, thank you once again, man. It was a pleasure talking to you.
It was really nice. I enjoyed it. Peace out.
All right, man. Peace out. That was a lot of fun, guys. Take care.
You win.
This has been a KPB Media Works production.